This is the Clean Energy Show with Brian Stockton and James Whittingham.
Hello and welcome to episode 52 of the Clean Energy Show. I'm Brian Stockton.
Hey, and I'm James Whittingham. You're listening to a discussion of the week's news in clean energy and green technology. And what a week, Brian. This week we're going to talk about the weather in Texas and how some people say it's the wind turbines. Other people say it's the gas. Some people say different things when they're on Fox News and when they're at home talking to their own people telling the truth. And we're going to have investing news from Warren Buffett. I don't know what that's about. That's your stuff. And EVs and frigid weather. Lots of frigid weather talk this week because not only did it get down to minus 20 in Texas, it got down to minus 1,000 here where we live in Canada. So, Brian, Texas is a big story this week.
Yeah, and I got to tell you, I skimmed a couple of articles, and I'm now one of the world's leading experts on the electricity grid in Texas.
So am I. I'm quite amazed by it. So 10 years ago, they had a cold snap that wasn't as bad. This is considered a 1 in 100-year event. I heard 1 in 50. Now they're talking 1 in 100. And of course, with climate change, you have your 1 in 100-year events happening more often. So I don't know if this is a breakup of the polar vortex that has been affecting us that's going to affect Texas more often. And God help them if it does, because they have to deal with hurricanes. At least, Brian, we don't have to deal with hurricanes, do we?
No, we do get tornadoes, though.
Not too many. It's not like we're dodging them every day. But anyway, there's a certain amount, I think, a great deal of people in Texas don't have insulated homes, because why would you? You want to insulate against... the power grid is set up to deal with minus 40 or plus 42, not minus 42, not minus 20. So the power grid is set up for peak demand for air conditioning on hot days, right?
Yeah.
And a lot of it is... a lot of their heating comes from electricity, so when the electricity comes out, you're screwed. But you do need electricity for heating, even if you have natural gas. A lot of people forget. The people are saying, well, we can't use electricity off of solar and wind if it's going to go out. Well, you can't have gas heating either unless it's a boiler.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Our furnaces need electrical fans to operate. So, when you experienced that, you had that big, what was it, 11-hour power outage?
11 hours, but they've been out for 24 hours, and they've had rolling blackouts in Texas. And I really feel bad for them because I had heat in my house. I mean, I was warm in my house when my power went out. It was warmer here when my power went out. It was like minus 5 or something. And I have a well-insulated house for the Canadian prairies, and it worked well. But in Texas, they're going to their cars to warm up. They're using what little hot water they can get. And it's horrible. It's probably more painful than a hurricane, what they're going through down there.
Yeah, and it's sad because, of course, everything in this day and age becomes a clickbaity, oppositional kind of argument. So on the one hand, you've got people blaming the wind turbines, and then on the other hand, you have reality, which is it's a mostly natural gas and coal-powered mix. I have a chart in front of me. So Texas is 46%, this is the electrical grid, 46% natural gas, 23% wind, 18% coal, 11% nuclear, and just 2% solar. So their wind mix is actually quite large at 23%. And they have had freezing rain, I guess. I wasn't quite clear on this, like why some of their wind turbines have stopped working. But I guess freezing rain is. Do you know any more about that?
Part of it is lubricants. The lubricants aren't rated for minus whatever, and part of it is icing. But of course, wind turbines work in cold weather. Most of the wind turbines in the world are, they're in Nordic seas where it's splashing around in moist air. And we have wind turbines in Saskatchewan here. Not as many as we should, but they do function. What I did learn, Brian, and this is very interesting to me, is that they only work until minus 30. I had no idea that wind turbines only work to minus 30. I don't know why that is. I don't know if there's an alternative for that, or if it's worth finding a solution to why they only work to minus 30. I have a feeling that they're just not rated. Now, 10 years ago in Texas, they did have problems with cold weather, and they did have reports that come out that said you should winterize your turbines and your natural gas system and your electrical grid. Did they do it? A little bit, but not enough. I mean, it's hard to prepare for something that you don't know is going to happen. Like who would have thunk minus 20 in Dallas the other day or something like that? I mean, that's Celsius, by the way. So
No, that's quite surprising.
they expected for a peak winter event to have 16% from wind and 30% from natural gas. So there's twice as much natural gas involved, and it's mainly the natural gas that's not working. And there's different reasons for it, but I have a clip here from Mark Hislop's YouTube channel. I'm just going to get to that. He has been talking to Professor Joshua Rhodes at the University of Texas in Austin, and I'll just play you a bit of Mark's interview with him.
Yeah, so we've got kind of a cascading failures in multiple different grids. Like just back up a little bit back up. Texas is a summer peaking system. Like we size our things for hot summer afternoons when it's 42 degrees outside and we're all trying to cool our houses down. Gas wells out in West Texas are getting so cold they're freezing, and so we don't have supply going into the system, and we've got record supply trying to go out of the system. They said yesterday that about a third of our thermal fleet is offline.
So again, that was Professor Joshua Rhodes, the University of Texas at Austin, and I took that from Mark Hislop's Energy Media YouTube channel, which I recommend, as well as his podcast, and he's on Twitter. Good person to follow. He's a Canadian journalist who writes about the energy industry. Brian, I don't know what else you have to say about that, other than I'm just really surprised at how this is not working and how it's been blamed on wind.
Yeah, no,
green.
especially when wind is only 23% of the grid. But that thing you said about lubricants makes a lot of sense because, of course, we use different oil in our cars, in our gas-burning cars.
That's right.
You use a 5W30 oil in Canada because you need that for the cold, whereas, if you're down south, you don't have to worry about that. So, yeah, different lubricants, that explanation makes a lot of sense to me. But the other thing I learned as I became one of the world's leading experts on the power grid in Texas was that they have a unique grid there that's actually closed off from the rest of the grid in America. They set up a long time ago to be a completely independent state in terms of their power grid. And it was to avoid some federal regulations that were brought in 50 or 100 years ago or something. So in order to avoid the federal regulations, they made a power grid that is state only. So most states and, certainly our provinces here in Canada, we do have separate grids for each province, but they still talk to each other. So we can still supply power to our neighboring province and they can supply it to us. And in fact, Manitoba, they supply a lot of power to the northern United States, so it goes across borders. But in Texas, they don't have that. So that is also another reason why they've had this grid failure, is that they don't have that ability to import power from neighboring states.
And that, of course, Texas, is a huge bloody mistake. And you can't do that, especially now in the time of renewables. And you could say what you want about renewables. We're going to get a lot of hate comments. I know that. Well, screw you. Screw you, haters. I never liked you. You don't know what you're talking about. And look at the facts. The governor of Texas was on, I saw a journalist, a national journalist in the States, show the different ways that the governor of Texas is talking about it. On Fox News, he blames the wind turbines. On his own, and I've been reading a lot of Texas papers here to see what's really going on. That's all you have to do, people. Pick up a freaking newspaper. And I know you don't trust it if it doesn't agree with you, if facts don't agree with you. But pick up a Texas newspaper, you can see what's actually going on. You see what the guy's saying in Texas, and he's, of course, blaming the natural gas. And natural gas is finicky. I don't know, do you know if they, well, for one thing, our natural gas lines are like 4 feet underground so they don't freeze, because that's kind of where the frost line is, that it doesn't freeze at 4 feet down, right? Something like that.
Yeah, well, our system is winterized. Like, it has to be built to withstand minus 40, so it is.
Yeah, and they have plenty of reserve as well. Thank goodness, because when it does, suddenly go from -2 to -42 Celsius, you don't want to be without heat. Texas, Brian, has the population basically of Canada. And so if you think about our whole country without power and rolling blackouts in very cold conditions and dealing with snow, like they've never had a wind chill warning ever in history. They've had a wind chill warning. Hello, people in Texas. Welcome to Canada weather. Hopefully, you won't have to deal with that anymore. Who knows? It's just because it's a 1 in 100 year event doesn't mean it's global warming that's caused this. But if it starts happening on a regular basis, that means something weird is going on with the climate weirding, as they say, and the polar vortex is. So it's happening in other places, and what's making us very cold has sort of dipped down to Texas. Okay, so it's gone Texas is directly below us, by the way. Hello down there in Texas. If you look up, you can see us here in Saskatchewan. Officials in Mississippi said they have not ever had heavy-duty plows for their trucks to clear highways, so they can't clear the snow off their highways. The state rarely needs them, and I don't blame you. I mean, it's hard to spend money on something that might happen once every 100 years, right? I put your tax dollars somewhere else. I mean, and just grit your teeth through it. But this is pretty painful stuff. Cars were careening out of control, and residents were slipping on ice that they had little practice navigating. I know when I see ice, Brian, I slow down and get cautious, especially as I'm top heavy now. I'm a lot top heavier than I used to be.
Yeah, and I have, factory studded winter tires on my car. That's the first time I bought those. It's actually kind of a new thing. Studs that are put on at the factory, they're often just put on at the tire shop. So I don't know, with our climate changing slightly here, like we got rain in January, which also happened a few years ago. This is a thing that never used to happen. Our roads are a lot icier, it seems, in the winter. So a thing like a studded tire, I actually think is fairly important now. It really helps on those super icy conditions. But yes, studded tires aren't even illegal everywhere. In southern Ontario, it's actually illegal to have studded tires.
Because of what it does to the asphalt, or what?
Yeah, although I think that's more based on the way studs were made 50 years ago. So... but it's generally warm enough that you don't need it.
Well, it just, I bet that Texas had more snow, or almost as much snow as we had last year, and the year before that, and the year before that. We've had a stretch we have a bit more snow this year, which has allowed cross-country skiing. But our weather has sort of shuffled from minus 30 Celsius, and now next week it'll be melting. So there's no sweet spot for having fun in the winter, or even going for a walk, because once it gets melty, then you start dealing with ice. And I slipped on the ice already this year. It was not pleasant. My aging body is not falling well, Brian. It's not.
Yeah, no, I went down once too, and it was not pleasant. I actually watched a YouTube video about cycling in Finland. I don't have the name of it in front of me, but that's another thing I think we don't think enough about around here. Like, we obviously have money for snow clearing and snow plowing, but I don't know, it could probably be better spent. This city in Finland, they have all of these purpose-built bike lanes for winter cycling, but they don't scrape them down to the cement. They actually, it's sort of like more like grooming. They groom a layer of packed snow, which is kind of a better grip for most bicycles.
Is it?
Around here, it's kind of haphazard. Sometimes we shovel down to the cement, sometimes we don't. And, if you do try to shovel down to the cement, you often get this patchy black ice, which is more dangerous. So that made a lot of sense to me when I saw this about, cycling in Finland, that, we really should do more grooming than clearing around here. If we had a consistent layer of hard packed snow, that would be probably better than what we have now.
Interesting. How are you finding the tires?
Yeah, the tires on the car have been great. I would really hesitate to go with anything other than studded tires at this point. We just have too much ice on the roads.
Well, I'm going with nearly bald, all-weather, all-season tires. That's what I'm going with.
Good luck.
I do have the luxury of living on a Category 2 street, which they plow on a regular basis. I also have the luxury of a pandemic, so I don't go anywhere. And also the luxury of, electric cars are heavier. You'll see a lot of people putting sandbags in their pickup trucks for winter. You don't have to do that with electric. It's heavy yeah. As it is. So, Brian, according to the Canadian government, there are cold weather packages on wind turbines installed in Canada. Most of the time, maybe not on the West Coast where it's a bit warmer. But apparently they saved money by not putting the cold weather packages on wind turbines because they figure they'd only need it 1 in 50 years. And, well, here we are. Now, if their grid becomes, they have a lot of wind in Texas, but if it becomes even more dependent on wind, then what are they going to do?
Yeah, good question. I don't know.
Okay, so the Canadian government says that they expect to frequently operate in freezing temperatures with moisture to keep the blades turning. They freeze the ice off the blades, and I wouldn't want to be around a wind turbine with ice flying off of it. And keep the power going at temperatures as low as minus 30. Conditions can vary across Canada, with some places experiencing much worse winter weather than others. Hello, that's us. And turbine operators spend these measures tailor fit for their installation. I would like to talk to a wind person. If you're a wind person, give me a call. Give me a DM. I want to know if it's possible. Because, in our far north, they're going to need some power, and wind would be a good way to get it up there. Brian, I do know that solar works in mine as anything, because we have solar panels on our roof. Now, yours are kind of flat, so they get snow, and they stay that way for a long time. Mine's fortunately more at an angle, and they all face south. And I had melting the other day at minus 25. Minus 25 because the wind was calm in mid-February. I might have believed it in late March, if it got that cold, and it does sometimes. Melting. So what happens at 1 o'clock at our solar noon here, when the sun is the highest in the sky and there's no wind? I assume the wind is important because it only happens when there's no wind, and so the radiant heat can build up on the roof. And I had melting, so I had 3 panels covered, and now they're not covered anymore because it melted. My son saw it dripping off the roof. I just cannot believe. The sun is a very powerful thing, people. If you have no idea what it is, look it up. It's a big, hot thing in the sky.
No, and as we discussed earlier, Texas only has 2% of their grid is solar, so if they increase that mix, maybe they'd be doing a bit better now.
Yes, and I read that solar came back online. It was offline too. Some of it is just the grid itself, just the electrical switching and stuff, and the transformers and the down thingies and the upswingies, and they're just not working in the cold weather too. So, increase that solar. I don't know why they don't have more solar in Texas, especially with the price declining. We're going to have more on that later in the show. That wraps us up for the YouTube portion of our show. Remember to subscribe to our YouTube channel, where we are posting videos every week. I've got a video up there that I made last week, Brian, of how electric cars work in minus 40-degree weather. I had a quick little explainer, something that fit on Twitter, and it's up there if you want to have a look at it. I'm James Whittingham. We'll be right back.